Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display floating above her workstation, her brow furrowed in concentration. Something about the data streams wasn't sitting right with her, though she couldn't quite put her finger on what. The research station's quantum processors had already analyzed the information multiple times, finding nothing unusual in the atmospheric readings from the planet below. "You've been staring at those numbers for 3 hours, Sarah," came a melodious voice from behind her. "The computers say everything's normal." Sarah turned to face her colleague, Chief Science Officer Zixtal, whose crystalline form sparkled under the station's ambient lighting. The Lumerians' faceted surface rippled with patterns of blue light, their species equivalent of a concerned expression. "I know what the computers say, Zix," Sarah replied, running her fingers through her short black hair. "But something feels off. These methane levels, they're within expected parameters, but the variation pattern doesn't make sense for a planet with this atmospheric composition." Zixtal's surface flickered with amber light. Amusement. "Ah yes, the famous human gut feeling. You do realize that our quantum analysis systems are calculating variables across 11 dimensions. They're designed to detect patterns far too complex for organic minds to comprehend." Sarah smiled, used to her friend's gentle skepticism of human intuition. The Lumerians were a species that had evolved beyond traditional biological constraints, their crystalline forms housing vast networks of quantum computational matrices. They took pride in their purely logical approach to science. "Remember the Proxima incident?" Sarah asked, bringing up another holographic window. "When human colonists reported feeling uneasy months before the seismic activity was detected by instruments. Sometimes there are patterns so subtle that they register only in our subconscious." "That was mere coincidence," Zixtal countered, though their light patterns betrayed uncertainty. Random chance aligned with human anxiety. Sarah was about to respond when something in the new data stream caught her eye. She leaned forward, enhancing a particular section of the atmospheric analysis. The methane fluctuations had a barely perceptible rhythm to them, like a heartbeat hidden in static. "Look at this," she said, highlighting the pattern. "Every 73 hours, there's a microscopic spike in methane levels, followed by a corresponding dip in carbon dioxide. It's too regular to be natural, but too irregular to trigger the automated pattern recognition systems." Zixtal's surface rippled with deep purple, their equivalent of deep thought. "The variation is within 0.003% of normal background fluctuations, statistically insignificant. But it's there," Sarah insisted. "And it's been increasing by nanoscopic amounts every cycle." She pulled up more data, this time from the planet's magnetic field readings. "See, there's a corresponding fluctuation in the magnetic field strength. Something down there is active, Zix, something artificial." The Lumerian scientist moved closer to the display, their crystalline form refracting light across the holographic data streams. "Even if you're right, the energy signature is so minimal, it would take centuries to amount to anything meaningful." Sarah shook her head, her fingers flying across the haptic interface as she compiled more data. "Unless it's exponential growth. Look at the progression curve when I extrapolate the pattern." The holographic display transformed into a three-dimensional graph, showing an exponential curve that reached alarming levels within weeks. Zixtal's surface flashed with alarmed crimson. This can't be correct," they stammered, their melodious voice hitting discordant notes. "Our systems would have detected such a pattern." "Not if they weren't looking for it," Sarah explained. "Human pattern recognition works differently. We're good at noticing things that feel wrong, even if we can't immediately explain why. It's saved our species countless times throughout our history." Before Zixtal could respond, the station's proximity alerts began blaring. New data flooded the holographic displays. Massive energy signatures were suddenly appearing all across the planet's surface, as if something ancient was awakening from a long slumber. "Alert the station commander," Sarah said grimly. Those methane variations weren't random fluctuations. They were a boot sequence, counting down to activation. and I think we just ran out of time. Zixtal's surface had gone completely white, their species' expression of shock. How did you know to look for this? Sarah's expression was grim as she watched more energy signatures blossoming across the planet below. Because the pattern felt wrong. Sometimes that's all we need to know that there's danger. The trick is learning to listen to that feeling before it's too late. The research station's alarms continued to wail as more and more ancient systems activated on the surface below. Sarah could only hope they'd discovered the pattern in time to do something about whatever was awakening on the mysterious planet. One thing was certain. The station's sophisticated sensors might analyze data across 11 dimensions, but they'd missed what human intuition had detected, the countdown to catastrophe hidden in the static. Station Commander Vex Thor's tentacles writhed with agitation as they studied the emergency reports flooding their command center. The massive cephalian's color-shifting skin flickered between shades of deep purple and burning orange, betraying their internal conflict. Around them, the station's senior staff had gathered for an emergency meeting, their diverse forms casting strange shadows in the holographic light. "Let me understand this clearly," Vex Thor rumbled, multiple eyes focusing on Sarah. "You're suggesting that an ancient planetary defense system has been awakening beneath our very sensors, and our only warning was your feeling." "The data supports my conclusion," Sarah replied firmly, standing her ground despite the commander's intimidating presence. "Those energy signatures match no known natural phenomenon. They're appearing in a geometric pattern consistent with artificial construction." The station's chief of security, a towering Orcian named Krell, clicked his mandibles dismissively. His armored exoskeleton gleamed as he gestured at the sensor readings. "Our defensive systems detect no weapon signatures, no radiation patterns consistent with known military technology, nothing but background energy fluctuations. That's because we're dealing with technology far older than any of our species," Sarah argued, manipulating the holographic display. "Look at the distribution pattern of these energy sources. They form a perfect dodecahedron when mapped in three-dimensional space. Nature doesn't create that kind of geometry by accident." Zixtal's crystalline form pulsed with supportive blue light. Dr. Chen's observation of the methane fluctuation pattern proved correct. "Perhaps we should consider." "Consider what?" Krell interrupted. "Evacuating the station because a human got nervous about some gas levels. Our entire scientific mission is at stake here. The Galactic Council won't look kindly on us abandoning our research post over unsubstantiated hunches." Sarah felt her frustration rising but forced herself to remain calm. She'd encountered this kind of resistance before. Highly advanced species often had difficulty accepting that their technology might miss something that human intuition could detect. "Commander," she said, addressing Vex Thor directly, "humanity survived countless existential threats before we developed advanced technology. We evolved to notice patterns that predict danger, even if we can't immediately explain why something feels wrong. It's not magic or mysticism. It's pattern recognition operating on a level that sometimes bypasses conscious thought." The commander's tentacles curled thoughtfully. "An interesting evolutionary adaptation. But surely you understand our hesitation to take action based on such subjective evidence." Before Sarah could respond, a new alert flashed across the holographic displays. The energy readings from the planet's surface had shifted, forming new patterns that pulsed with increasing intensity. Analysis confirms a 12% increase in energy output across all detected sources, reported the station's eye. Geometric pattern maintaining coherence. Detecting harmonic resonance between energy signatures. Krell's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of growing concern. "These readings, they're unlike anything in our database." "Because they're not meant to be in any database," Sarah explained, her voice urgent. "Whatever we've discovered here, it's older than our civilizations, older than our records. The only reason I noticed it was because it felt wrong on a fundamental level, like the silence before a predator strikes." As if in response to her words, the entire station shuddered. The holographic displays flickered, and for a moment, Every light dimmed. When the systems restored, the sensor readings had changed dramatically. Energy signatures are now registering across 70% of the planet's surface, the AI announced, detecting coherent patterns in subspace readings. Warning: gravitational anomalies detected in planetary orbit. Commander Vexthor's skin had shifted to a pale gray, their species' color of grave concern. Dr. Chen, what do your human instincts tell you about our current situation? Sarah studied the new data streams, letting her mind process the patterns without trying to force conscious analysis. Whatever's down there, it's not just waking up anymore. It's starting to test its systems. And I think it's becoming aware of us. The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Outside the viewing ports, strange lights had begun to dance across the planet's atmosphere, forming intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with purpose. Security protocols initiated, the AI announced, detecting multiple unknown energy signatures attempting to interface with station systems. Still think this is just a feeling? Sarah asked Krell, who had gone utterly still, his armored form reflecting the eerie lights from the planet below. I'm beginning to understand. The security chief replied quietly, why your species survived long enough to reach the stars. Commander Vexthor's tentacles moved in rapid patterns as they began issuing emergency orders. All departments, battle stations, begin emergency protocols. And Dr. Chen. They turned their multiple eyes towards Sarah. What does your intuition suggest we do next? Sarah watched as more mysterious lights bloomed across the planet's surface, her mind racing to process the patterns she was seeing. The ancient system wasn't just awakening. It was evolving, adapting, learning. And somehow, she knew they only had hours before it reached full power. We need to understand what triggered it, she said finally. These systems stayed dormant for eons. Something about our presence, our activities, woke them up. If we can figure out what that was, maybe we can figure out how to shut them down before they decide we're a threat. Time was running out. The research station's emergency lights cast crimson shadows across the command center as Sarah and her colleagues raced to understand the ancient system that was rapidly coming to life beneath them. The planet's surface now blazed with geometric patterns of energy, visible even to the naked eye through the station's viewports. Energy output has increased by 300%, Zixtel reported, their crystalline form pulsing with anxious purple light. The pattern recognition algorithms still can't identify a coherent purpose to the activations. Sarah stood before the main holographic display, her eyes darting between multiple data streams. She'd stopped trying to analyze the information logically, and instead let her mind drift, looking for patterns that felt significant rather than just statistically relevant. The station's shields are holding, Krell announced from his security station. But these energy waves are like nothing I've ever encountered. They're not attacking our defenses. They're studying them. It's learning, Sarah murmured, watching the energy patterns shift and change. Every time we adjust our shields, it adjusts its approach. But why? What is it trying to determine? Commander Vexthor's tentacles moved in agitated patterns. Dr. Chen, you said we triggered this awakening. What exactly did we do to disturb a system that's remained dormant for millennia? Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, letting her mind process everything they knew. The methane fluctuations, the geometric patterns, the way the system adapted to their responses. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open. We didn't do anything, she said, excitement creeping into her voice. That's it. We didn't do anything wrong. It's not attacking us. It's testing us. Explain, Vexthor demanded, their skin shifting to a curious shade of blue-green. Sarah's fingers flew across the holographic controls, pulling up their research data from the past 6 months. Look at our research patterns. Every test, every scan, every analysis we've run. We've been methodical, logical, predictable. We've behaved exactly like automated systems would. Zixtel's surface rippled with confusion. That is the proper scientific method. How else would we conduct research? But it's too perfect, Sarah insisted. Too mechanical. Whatever civilization built this system, they must have had problems with artificial intelligences or automated weapons in their past. The system isn't attacking us. It's trying to determine if we're biological or artificial. As if to confirm her theory, another wave of energy washed over the station, but this time it felt different. Less aggressive, more inquisitive. The energy patterns are changing, Krell reported, his mandibles clicking rapidly. They're becoming more irregular. Because we're not responding like machines would, Sarah explained, growing more confident in her theory. Every species on this station has relied on their technology to analyze and respond to the threat. But humans, we've been unpredictable, intuitive. We've shown signs of true biological intelligence. Commander Vexthor's skin rippled with thoughtful patterns. If you're right, how do we prove to this system that we're not a mechanical threat? Sarah smiled, an idea forming. We do something no machine would ever do. We take a risk based on intuition. She turned to face the commander. We need to lower our shields. The command center erupted in protests. Krell's exoskeleton rattled with alarm, and Zixtal's surface flashed with patterns of shock and disbelief. That would be suicide, Krell argued. Those energy levels could tear the station apart. No, Sarah said firmly. That's exactly the kind of logical, fear-based response a machine would predict. We need to show this system that we can trust our instincts, that we can take actions that defy pure logic. Commander Vexthor studied her with their multiple eyes. You're certain about this, based on nothing more than your human intuition. Sometimes the most logical action is to defy logic, Sarah replied. That's something only living beings can truly understand. The station shuddered again as another energy wave approached. The commander's tentacles writhed in decisive patterns. Lower the shields. Commander, Krell protested, but Vexthor cut him off with a gesture. Dr. Chen's human intuition has been right at every turn. If she believes this is the way to prove we're not machines, I'm inclined to trust her judgment. Sarah held her breath as the shields powered down. The approaching energy wave reached the station and passed through it like a gentle breeze. The geometric patterns on the planet's surface began to shift, their harsh angles softening into more organic shapes. Energy signatures are reconfiguring, Zixtal reported, their crystalline form glowing with amazement. The patterns, they're beautiful. The holographic displays lit up with new data as the ancient system began transmitting information directly to the station. Not attack patterns or weapon signatures, but something far more valuable. Knowledge. It's not a weapon, Sarah breathed, watching the data stream in. It's a library, a test to ensure that only conscious, living beings could access its knowledge. Mechanical precision would have triggered its defenses, but biological intuition, that was the key all along. Commander Vexthor's skin had shifted to a deep gold, their color of profound revelation. Perhaps, they said thoughtfully, there are some questions that can only be answered by trusting what cannot be measured. The command center had transformed into an impromptu research hub as the station's scientists worked to process the flood of information streaming from the ancient library system. Holographic displays filled the air with cascading data, mathematical formulae, and scientific theories far beyond their current understanding. Sarah sat cross-legged in front of her workstation, her eyes closed in concentration. Around her, her alien colleagues worked frantically to categorize and analyze the incoming data, their various forms moving in an intricate dance of scientific discovery. The amount of knowledge stored in this system is staggering, Zixtal announced, their crystalline surface rippling with excitement. The technological applications alone could advance our civilizations by centuries. If we can understand it, Krell added, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully as he studied a weapons schematic that seemed to defy the laws of physics as they knew them. Much of this appears to operate on principles we've never even theorized. Sarah opened her eyes, watching the data flow. Something about the way the information was being presented nagged at her consciousness. We're approaching this wrong, she said suddenly, standing up. "We're still thinking like scientists, trying to categorize and analyze everything systematically." Commander Vexthor, who had been coordinating with the Galactic Council, turned their attention to her. "How else should we approach it? This is the greatest scientific discovery in recent history. But it wasn't designed to be accessed scientifically," Sarah explained, moving to the central holographic display. "Remember, this system was specifically created to be accessed by biological minds, not mechanical ones. Look at how the information flows. It's not linear or hierarchical." She gestured at the spiraling patterns of data. "It's organic, intuitive. The information isn't just stored here. It's alive in its own way. It responds to how we think and feel about it." To demonstrate, she closed her eyes again and thought about stellar formation, not the equations or the physics, but the pure wonder of how stars are born. The data streams shifted immediately, coalescing into a breathtaking visualization of stellar evolution that somehow made perfect sense on an instinctive level. "Remarkable," Zixtal whispered, their crystalline form pulsing with deep blue light. "The system is responding to emotional and intellectual engagement rather than pure logical queries." "That's why it had to test us," Sarah continued, growing more excited. "It needed to ensure we could understand knowledge on multiple levels, not just the mathematical and scientific, but the intuitive and emotional as well. Real understanding requires both." Krell stepped forward, his armored form reflecting the dancing lights of the data streams. "But how do we document and share knowledge that can't be fully expressed in equations and technical language?" "The same way humans have always shared our deepest insights," Sarah replied with a smile. "Through stories, through art, through experiences that combine logic and emotion." She turned to Commander Vexthor. "We need to assemble a team that includes not just scientists, but artists, philosophers, musicians, people who understand that some truths can't be measured, only felt." The commander's skin shifted through thoughtful patterns of color. "The Galactic Council may not approve of such an unorthodox approach to research. Then they'll never access the full depth of knowledge stored here," Sarah said firmly. "This library wasn't created by beings who saw the universe as merely a set of equations to be solved. They understood that true wisdom comes from combining rational thought with intuitive understanding." As if responding to her words, the holographic displays shifted again, revealing new layers of information that seemed to exist somewhere between mathematics and poetry, between physics and philosophy. "Look at this," Zixtal said in awe, their surface rippling with complex patterns of light. "These aren't just technical specifications. They're teaching us how to think in new ways, how to perceive reality through multiple lenses simultaneously." "Now you're getting it." Sarah grinned. She watched as her logical, technically minded colleagues began to approach the data differently, letting their intuition guide them as much as their analytical minds. Commander Vexthor's tentacles moved in decisive patterns. "I will inform the Council that this discovery requires a unique approach. Dr. Chen, I want you to lead the team that will interface with this library. Your human ability to balance logic and intuition makes you uniquely qualified." "We'll need representatives from all our species," Sarah said, already planning. "Each of us perceives reality differently, processes information in unique ways. Together, we might be able to grasp the full spectrum of knowledge stored here." Krell, who had been skeptical of human intuition from the start, clicked his mandibles in what Sarah had learned was an expression of respect. Perhaps this is why the humans had advanced so quickly since joining the galactic community. You never lost touch with your intuitive understanding of the universe, even as you developed your scientific knowledge. The ancient library continued to pulse with energy, its patterns shifting and changing in response to their growing understanding. It was more than just information storage. It was a bridge between the rational and the intuitive, the measurable and the felt, the known and the sensed. 3 months had passed since the discovery of the ancient library, and the research station had transformed beyond recognition. What was once a sterile scientific facility now hummed with a different kind of energy. Artists worked alongside physicists. Philosophers debated with engineers, and musicians collaborated with mathematicians, all seeking to understand the depths of knowledge stored within the mysterious system. Sarah stood at her favorite observation window, watching the shifting patterns of light that still danced across the planet's surface. Behind her, she could hear the melodic tones of a Lemurian crystal song, merging with the complex equations being projected by the station's computers, a new method they'd developed for processing the library's more abstract concepts. The Galactic Council's representatives will be arriving within the hour, Commander Vexthor announced, gliding up beside her. Their skin displayed a complex pattern of gold and silver, pride mixed with anticipation. "Are you nervous about their reaction?" Sarah asked, noting the slight fluctuation in the commander's colors. 3 months ago, I would have been, Vexthor replied. But I've learned to trust that feeling you humans call intuition, and my intuition tells me they're about to witness something extraordinary. The command center had been transformed into a presentation space where representatives from every species on the station had gathered to demonstrate their findings. Zixtal's crystalline form now bore intricate patterns that somehow expressed quantum mechanics through light and shadow, while Krell had modified his exoskeleton to resonate with frequencies that could convey complex spatial concepts through sound. To think, Sarah mused, if we'd approached this discovery with pure logic, we'd have missed most of its wisdom. The beings who created this library understood something profound about consciousness itself. The station's alert system chimed softly, announcing the arrival of the Council's ship. Sarah watched as the sleek vessel emerged from hyperspace, its hull gleaming in the light of the system's star. She felt that familiar flutter in her stomach, that human instinct that told her this moment was important. As the Council members filed into the command center, Sarah couldn't help but smile at their reactions. The usually stoic representatives of various advanced civilizations stopped in their tracks, caught off guard by the unusual scene before them. What is this?" asked the mechanoid representative, their artificial eyes whirring as they tried to process the artistic displays mixed with scientific data. "This," Commander Vexthor announced proudly, "is the future of galactic science. We've discovered that true understanding requires more than just data and analysis. It requires intuition, creativity, and the ability to perceive truth through multiple lenses simultaneously." Sarah stepped forward to begin the presentation. Rather than starting with charts and graphs, she gestured to a young Arxian artist who had synchronized their bioluminescent patterns with the library's energy fluctuations. The resulting display told the story of their discovery in a way that engaged both the logical and intuitive minds of their audience. "The ancient civilization that created this library," Sarah explained, "had achieved something we're only beginning to understand. They didn't just advance technologically. They evolved in their very way of thinking. They learned to bridge the gap between measurable reality and felt truth." As she spoke, the holographic displays responded to her words, creating patterns that seemed to bypass the conscious mind and speak directly to something deeper. She watched as understanding dawned in the eyes of the Council members, their various physiological responses indicating that they were experiencing something beyond mere comprehension. "This is why the system tested us," she continued. "It wasn't just checking for biological life. It was waiting for beings who could understand that the greatest discoveries happen when we trust both our analytical minds and our deeper instincts, when we allow ourselves to know things we can't immediately explain." The mechanoid representative's artificial eyes had stopped whirring, settling into a steady glow. "We have always believed that pure logic was the path to ultimate knowledge. But this suggests a different kind of intelligence entirely." "Not different," Sarah corrected gently. "Complementary. Logic and intuition, analysis and instinct, measurement and feeling. These aren't opposing forces. They're two halves of a whole, like the binary stars dancing above us." As if to emphasize her point, the library system pulsed with new energy, creating a display that simultaneously expressed a complex mathematical theorem and a profound philosophical truth. The council members watched in amazement as the pattern shifted and evolved, responding to their collective consciousness. Humanity's greatest gift to the galactic community, Commander Vexthor declared, their skin glowing with pride, may not be our technology or our resources, but our reminder that some truths can only be found when we trust what we feel as much as what we can prove. The presentation continued, but Sarah's attention was drawn back to the window, to the dancing lights on the planet below. She felt that familiar tug of intuition, telling her that this was just the beginning. Somewhere out there, more ancient wisdom waited to be discovered, not by the most advanced sensors or the most powerful computers, but by those who remembered to trust that quiet voice that whispers, "Something's different," or "This feels important." And when those discoveries came, humanity would be ready. Because sometimes the most sophisticated detection system in the universe is the gut feeling that makes us look twice at something that doesn't quite add up. In a galaxy full of wonders, perhaps that was humanity's greatest contribution. The reminder that not all knowledge comes from analysis, and not all truth can be measured with instruments.